Hey everyone, Flo from OFTWOLANDS here, and today we're going to talk about the new Sirui Astra Anamorphic lenses. I've been filming with these lenses for the past few weeks, and in this video I will talk about my experience with them, what I like and don't like about these lenses, and finally whether or not I would recommend them. I will also discuss briefly how they compare to the Ironstar. As always, before I start, be sure to subscribe to see more videos like this one, and let's get into it. If you've been following me for a while now, you know that I've been using Sirui products for a few years. I've started with the Jupiter Macro Cine Primes, then the Vision series, and recently the Ironstar Anamorphic. And I also have been using the video tripod and head on a weekly basis for the past couple of years. Recently, they asked me if I was interested in testing the upcoming anamorphic lenses, and I said yes. There are a few reasons that made me want to get these lenses. The main one is that these are autofocus lenses, which is rare for cine glass and even more so when it comes to anamorphic. And since I have the Cinema Camera 6K, I was very curious to test out how the autofocus would work. I'll be sure to show several examples throughout the video. The other reason is that these come in L mount, which works perfectly for both my Cinema Camera 6K and PYXIS 12K. But I was also interested because they are small, light and fast. I really like the Ironstar, but I have to use an adapter for the PYXIS and the Cinema Camera 6K as they are EF or PL. Now, full disclaimer, Sirui did send me these lenses for me to keep, but they don't get to modify the content of this video, and these are my own opinions. Recently, I've received a few comments with people complaining that I get to keep lenses against reviews. I completely understand if you choose not to watch, but I want to be honest from the get-go. I get lenses because I need to be compensated for my time spent making these videos. I don't get lenses or get paid on YouTube to say things. It is simply because it is my job and I can't work for free. And as with all my reviews, I want to give as much information while still being genuine and show you what I like but also what I don't like after using these in an organic way. The rest is entirely up to you. Now back to the lenses. Over the past few weeks, I've been using these lenses to shoot anything from documentary style content to landscape, as well as personal content. I filmed in full bright daylight, in a forest, and at sunset. As always, when I do reviews, I prefer to use lenses to film actual content or projects and not just test footage. When I don't have a project to align with, I try my best to replicate scenes and scenarios that mimic the type of content I shoot. I wish I had more time with these, but I really did film as much as I can. Overall, I shot around 150 clips. In terms of cameras, I filmed of course with the new Blackmagic PYXIS 12K, as well as the Cinema Camera 6K. And I use these lenses on sticks, with a gimbal, and handheld. As always, you can find all the gear in the description below. Just a few notes. Since it is still for the purpose of a review, I also pointed at the sun more than I would normally do, and I also did a lot of follow shots to test out the autofocus. There is also a lot of handheld shots and more movement in general, as I think it suits anamorphic better than my usual locked-in shots. Now let's get into the actual lenses. The Astra lineup is made of 3 lenses for now: the 50, the 75, and a 100mm. And they are all 1.33 times anamorphic. These lenses are also T1.8 and manual, and are also made for full-frame cameras. They are available in E, L, and Z. I have the L version, and I also happen to have the blue flare version. In terms of weight, they are roughly between 600 and 700 grams, which makes them quite light. And for size, here are them compared to the Ironstar 1.5 times and the Vision Primes. They have a 67mm filter thread, and they all have the same size between them as well as the same gear position, which makes it easy to swap or balance. And finally, their full price is $8.99 per lens, but you can also get them cheaper with the early bird pricing at $7.99, using the link below. The 3 lens kit will retail at $23.99 with the early bird pricing. You can find more info on these lenses with a link in the description. Now let's talk about the things that I like about these. First of all, they are light and compact. This is something that is always important for me as I shoot a lot of handheld, and I'm also not a huge fan of large rigs. These are quite light for being anamorphic lenses and are also fairly compact, which makes them a good choice for gimbal content as well. Being able to use them with just a VND is great. Next is the aperture. The Astra has a fast at 1.8. This is of course great when you want shallow depth of field, but it is also very useful when shooting in dark environments or when you want to focus the viewer's eyes on something specific. Then of course there is the image. I really like the image that comes from the Astras. I think they have enough character to get that anamorphic look, having strong but natural looking flares, but they're also neutral enough to use on different projects. On some shots you can really see the anamorphic characteristics, especially around the edges, and it is quite impressive since these are only 1.33. I also find that they have rich colors and they were very easy to grade. The close focus distance is pretty good as well and isn't an issue, which can sometimes be the case with anamorphic glass. Next is the shooting experience. Due to their size and weight, I find these lenses to be quite versatile. They are light enough to use handheld or with small setups or on gimbals, but you can also rig them up if you want it, since they are long enough to put focus motors and a matte box for example. And they also don't require lens support, which I really like. I also love that they allow me to use them for personal content as well as proper projects. Flexibility is always important for me, and these lenses can do that easily. Whether they were on my PYXIS 12K or Cinema Camera 6K, it was always an easy and straightforward experience. Then we have the L mount. These are my first native L anamorphic lenses, and I like that I don't have to use an adapter for either of those two cameras. Now let's talk a bit about what makes them special. First is of course the autofocus. Having autofocus on cine lenses can be extremely useful, and having it on anamorphic glass is quite special. There is just a switch on the side. Pretty easy. Personally, I'm someone that doesn't really use autofocus that much. Firstly because of the cameras that I use, but also because of my style of shooting. That being said, it is super nice to have, and it does work well on the Cinema Camera 6K for most of the time. Here are a few examples.
Okay, pretty good. Stay like that, yeah.
Then we have the click button. On the side there is a button that allows you to go between declicked and hard clicks when it comes to the aperture ring. I think having the choice is a great feature, and I haven't seen this on any modern lenses I've used. I also like that the camera shows the aperture. This is something that I'm not used to with anamorphic and cine lenses in general. There's also a function button on the side of the lens to lock or customize the autofocus, and another one to lock the iris for auto aperture. Again, feel free to check out the link below for more recent info on these lenses. And lastly, the value. I think these lenses offer amazing value. I don't think there are many modern anamorphic lenses made for full-frame sensors that are T1.8 and happen to have autofocus for that price. Now let's talk about the things that I don't like. First of all, I don't find them to be the sharpest wide open, but at 1.8 it is quite shallow on full-frame sensors anyway, so I stayed roughly between 2.8 and 4 most of the time. With the 100mm, I also had a strange focusing issue when filming at infinity. The image seemed to jump back and forth slightly, and I couldn't really tell if things were in focus at first. It didn't seem linear and felt a bit odd. You can see the peaking jumping back and forth quite abruptly on this clip. I did mention it to Sirui, and they are looking into it. For some of my landscape shots, I had to go to 5.6 and even 8 to be sure to get a sharp image, and it was sharp. Next is the overall build quality. These lenses feel good in the hand and to use, but they are not amazing, similar to the Vision Primes. The Ironstar, for example, feel much better. The front cap feels very cheap, but it does work well. Again, these lenses are quite cheap anyway, so it does make sense, and they still feel solid and are made of aluminium. Then we have the shape. I know this isn't really important, but I'm not a huge fan of the skinny look. These are light at least, but I prefer shorter or wider lenses. These are anamorphic lenses of course, so this is a very subjective opinion. For example, I used the Atlas Mercury on a 3-day shoot last week, and I much prefer that shape. Next is a D-squeeze ratio and overall anamorphic look. I would much prefer lenses with a 1.5x D-squeeze, at least, instead of the 1.33. That being said, I did find the look quite strong despite being 1.3, and I was able to monitor it correctly with the PYXIS 12K. Anamorphic flares and the bokeh can be hit and miss in terms of anamorphic characteristics depending on the situation as well. Then I want to quickly mention the colors. I really love the colors of these lenses, but I could notice a slight magenta tint on some of my clips. Now I'm not 100% sure if the VND or the Blackmagic cameras had an impact on it, but since I always use the same cameras and VNDs, I suspect the lenses to have a very slight shift of magenta in some situations. Not a deal breaker though, but I thought I'd mention it. Next, I would also like to have the focal length written on both sides or at least the top. And lastly, I would like to see wider focal length, such as 35, to make it a properly useful set. Usually I'm always asking for longer lenses, but with this kit, starting at 50mm, I would like also a wider one. Now I want to mention the autofocus. Whilst I think it is a great feature to have, with the Cinema Camera 6K, I prefer not to rely on it, as I actually lost a few shots because of it. I think the camera is to blame more than the lens, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people will test it out on different bodies. It does work on simple shots, especially when shooting at t4 and above, but wide open it can struggle and hunt quite a bit. Here are a few examples using different AF modes with the Cinema Camera 6K when it did not work, or when it was hunting. Personally, I think it can be very handy, but in my case I would either use manual focus or I would use my DJI LiDAR if I needed constant, reliable autofocus. I don't think the combo Astra plus Blackmagic cameras is good enough for proper projects yet when it comes to autofocus only. These lenses are great regardless of the autofocus feature. I won't do a full comparison, but I know people are curious about this. First, let's mention the similarities. They are both anamorphic, very fast, full frame, and have a great image or look. That being said, there are quite a few differences. First of all, the Astra have autofocus, which can be a huge plus. Then they are also lighter, smaller, and slightly faster. They also come in different mounts, being E, Z, and L, whilst the Ironstar come in EF and PL, and they are therefore targeted at different cameras and users. The Ironstar are also 1.5 against the 1.33 of the Astra, which can be a deciding factor for some. And they both also have different focal length. I think as always it depends on the projects and the gear that you are using. The Astra might be more suited to small rigs, travel, as well as personal content due to their size, whilst the Ironstar are better suited to larger rigs thanks to their overall size but also outer diameter and mount. Both options are great, and you will have to decide what's more important in terms of the mounts, disc-squeeze ratios, and of course autofocus. Would I recommend them? Yes, I would definitely recommend the Astra series. The image is great with enough anamorphic character while staying neutral. They are easy to use, fast, light, and they also happen to be full frame with a small form factor, which makes them very useful for a wide variety of projects, users, and cameras. Now, I wouldn't personally get them for their autofocus feature based on the cameras that I use, but it is nice to have and could be very useful on a camera that has strong and reliable autofocus. As I said, these are still great value lenses with or without the autofocus. I would suggest you look into them if you're looking at getting your first anamorphic lenses, especially if you shoot with mirrorless mounts. That's it for me for today, guys. Let me know if you've got any more questions. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, feel free to subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Also, feel free to check out my 2 ebooks, Freelance Documentary Filmmaking and Travel Cinematography, where you can find a streamlined but comprehensive overview from pre-production all the way to marketing, built on years of my own experience shooting short documentaries and travel videos around the world. And if you are interested, I'm also doing filmmaking mentoring sessions when you can ask me anything about a wide variety of topics.